The Galactic Council sat in a vast, domed chamber, their council seats arranged in a perfect, unbroken circle. Representatives from 1,000 different species crowded in the room, their gazes fixed on a single, floating projection screen. A new species had just arrived, one that many had dismissed as insignificant: humans. At first glance, they seemed like any other young, primitive species, confined to a small, insignificant planet, constantly at war with themselves. They had no advanced technology, nothing that even a tenth of the Galactic Council would consider noteworthy. The common sentiment among the galactic leaders was simple: humanity is nothing special. The decision had been made: humanity would be left to evolve on its own, isolated and unimportant. The galaxy had too many advanced species, and the humans had nothing to offer. But the moment the Council heard that the humans had made their first successful jump through interstellar space, using a new, unsophisticated drive system, their tone shifted. A low murmur swept through the room. Some were curious, others amused. The general consensus was still one of indifference. What could they possibly offer? And then the humans made their mistake. They entered the territory of the Crawl, a massive, warlike species that had known nothing but conquest and destruction for millennia. The Crawl's empire spanned vast regions of the galaxy, and their reputation was terrifying. Aggressive and cruel, the Crawl had annihilated countless species who dared to trespass into their space. No one thought that the humans, with their barely functioning ships, stood a chance. The Crawl, naturally, were enraged. They sent a fleet of warships to hunt down the human ships, hoping to annihilate them as quickly as possible. The Galactic Council watched this unfold with detached curiosity, expecting the humans to fold under the pressure. But humanity did not fold. They didn't flee. Instead, they fought back. The first signs of human ingenuity were almost imperceptible at first. A human ship, vastly outclassed in both size and firepower, managed to evade a Crawl cruiser with sheer audacity, dodging and weaving through asteroid fields and gravitational anomalies with an almost reckless abandon. The Crawl were puzzled. This species was unlike anything they'd encountered: wild, unpredictable, yet incredibly resourceful. In the following days, the human forces continued to outmaneuver the Crawl, launching daring counterattacks with weapons that the Crawl had never seen before, improvised, experimental designs that caused the Crawl's superior ships to be crippled by devices they didn't even understand. While the Crawl assumed the humans would simply be overwhelmed by superior firepower, what they didn't anticipate was how quickly humanity adapted. With every attack, every battle, the humans learned, improved, and struck back harder than before. The Crawl found themselves facing something they hadn't anticipated: a species that was stubborn enough to fight, clever enough to evolve quickly under pressure, and determined enough to never stop. The tide of battle was shifting, and the Crawl were not the ones doing the shifting. Meanwhile, the Council watched in stunned silence, as reports flooded in about the humans' continued success. What had once seemed like an easy conquest was now spiraling into something much more complicated. The Crawl were losing ships, soldiers, and territory at a rate they hadn't expected. They didn't understand why the humans wouldn't just die. Why were they not scared? Why were they not like any species they had conquered before? The galaxy, too, was beginning to take notice. The word humanity was no longer synonymous with mediocrity or insignificance. The humans were proving their worth through sheer tenacity and cunning. They were small, yes, but they were not weak. The Galactic Council began to reconsider. Perhaps they had misjudged humanity. Perhaps this species had more to offer than they realized. The question now became not whether humanity had a place in the galaxy, but how much it would cost to deny them one. As the Crawl's forces retreated, their pride shattered, a message went out across the stars, one of warning. It was sent by a species who had seen the impossible become reality and felt the sting of their own arrogance. The message was clear: underestimate humanity at your own peril. The Crawl were not accustomed to losing. Their empire was built on a foundation of ruthless conquests, and for the first time in millennia, their dominance was being questioned. Their warlords convened in their capital city, a fortress on a desolate planet in the heart of their empire. Blood-red skies reflected the tension in the war room, as they reviewed the humiliating reports from the front lines. "What happened?" the Supreme Warlord, Karnak, growled, his jagged, reptilian features twisting in fury. His voice echoed through the cavernous chamber, silencing the murmurs of the gathered generals. "These humans, how are they still standing?" One of his top commanders, Zorath, hesitated before speaking. The Kraul commander was not one to show weakness, but even he was shaken. "Their tactics are unorthodox. We've lost entire fleets to their ambushes. The human ships are fast, unpredictable. Their technology, it doesn't make sense. We can't anticipate it. They're using their own weapons?" Karnak barked. "No, my lord," Zorath replied, his voice strained. "They are using our own technology, repurposed. Adapted. They have no formal military doctrine, no centuries of training like we do. But somehow, they learn faster than we can counter them." Karnak slammed his fist into the table, rattling the reports. "Fools," he roared. "These creatures have no honor, no tradition. They're nothing but insects." A silence fell over the room. The Kraul had always relied on their superior strength, their dominance in battle, and their unbreakable will. And yet, here they were, facing something new, a species that refused to be crushed, a species that learned from its mistakes and adapted with a speed that defied all logic. The Kraul had underestimated humanity. But it wasn't just the Kraul who were taking notice. The Galactic Council had begun to stir. Representatives from every corner of the galaxy watched as the Kraul, once feared and revered, faltered against this insignificant species. While some of the more cautious factions still believed humanity posed no real threat, others saw an opportunity. An opportunity for both alliances and exploitation. One such faction was the Valkyrii, a race of hyper-intelligent beings whose civilization was based on genetic manipulation and bioengineering. They were known for their cold, clinical approach to everything, including warfare. And they were curious about humanity. They had long studied the Kraul, and while they found them a useful tool in expanding their own reach, they were now starting to question whether the Kraul's grip on power had been as secure as it seemed. The Valkyrii's leader, a being known only as Xylo, reached out to the humans, sending a peaceful delegation to make contact. They offered trade, advanced technology, and a place at the table with the galaxy's elite species. In exchange, humanity was expected to share their newfound knowledge of warfare and strategy. It was clear to the Valkyrii that the humans had something valuable, something that could reshape the balance of power across the galaxy. But humanity was not so easily swayed. In a dimly lit war room on Earth, President Alina Ross stood at the head of a table, surrounded by her top military advisors. They were studying the Valkyrii's offer, which had arrived just hours ago. On the holographic screen before them, Xylo's serene face floated in a display of perfect symmetry. "Are we really considering this?" General Jacobson, one of the president's closest military strategists, asked, his voice a mix of suspicion and caution. "Humanity doesn't need their help," Ross replied, her voice steady but resolute. "We've fought our way this far on our own. We don't owe them anything. But they offer us knowledge, advanced technology," Jacobson pressed. "This could give us an edge over the Kraul, maybe even other factions. This is an opportunity, Alina." Ross's eyes narrowed, her fingers tapping against the table thoughtfully. "And what's the cost?" "They want us to be part of their elite circle. To become one of their pawns. This isn't just about technology, it's about power. And they're betting that we'll want it." The room grew quiet. The Valkyrii had made their move, but humanity was not one to make hasty decisions. There was a lingering feeling in the air, an understanding that accepting the offer might very well lead to losing their autonomy, their humanity. But Ross knew one thing for certain: they would never be anyone's pawn. The Kraul had learned that the hard way. Humanity didn't play by the rules of the galaxy. And if they were going to win, it would be on their terms. "There's one thing I'm certain of," Ross said, her voice calm yet unwavering. "We'll continue to make our own path. We'll teach the galaxy that underestimating humanity isn't just dangerous, it's fatal." As she spoke, a deep sense of resolve settled over her. The galaxy had seen the cost of underestimating humanity, now it would witness the consequences of underestimating their ability to lead. The galaxy held its breath as the war with the Crawl escalated. Though the Crawl were known for their might, they had never faced an adversary like humanity. They had fought empires, defeated warlords, and crushed civilizations, until now. Humanity's audacity, adaptability, and sheer will to survive had caught them off guard. Every battle was a fresh puzzle, every tactic a new challenge. The Crawl were in retreat, their forces spread thin across vast sectors, struggling to hold their ground against a species they had once considered insignificant. Back on Earth, President Alina Ross sat at the helm of the human military, but she knew that they were only at the beginning of something much larger. The Crawl had underestimated humanity, but they weren't the only ones. The Galactic Council, observing from the sidelines, had been slow to react. But as the war turned in humanity's favor, things began to change. Whispers spread across the stars, carried by fleets of messengers and secret transmissions. The once dismissed humans were becoming the galaxy's most talked-about force. It wasn't just the Crawl that took notice, it was every faction. The Valkyrii, after their initial attempt at manipulation, began sending more subtle overtures, sensing that humanity was more capable than they had first imagined. The Tazarians, a race known for their brutal efficiency in warfare, watched as the humans adapted their technology in ways that were completely unexpected. Even the Xanthian, a peaceful, intellectual species, found themselves intrigued by the humans' capacity for innovation and their sheer determination. Despite the mounting attention, President Ross knew the future of humanity couldn't depend solely on military might. They had to ensure their place in the galaxy, not just as survivors but as equals, and perhaps more. But what made humanity truly unique wasn't just their ability to fight, it was their relentless thirst for discovery. They didn't just conquer, they learned, they evolved, and they forged ahead. Humanity was capable of shaping the galaxy, and that potential was something the Council would soon have to reckon with. Ross called for a global summit, bringing together the brightest minds from every corner of Earth. The subject was simple but profound: what next? The summit took place in a massive underground complex designed to house thousands of world leaders, scientists, and strategists. Each nation sent representatives to participate, and the stakes couldn't have been higher. The future of humanity in the galactic stage depended on this meeting. Ross stood before the assembled crowd, a map of the galaxy projected on the wall behind her. "We've shown the galaxy that we are not to be underestimated. But we're not here just to fight, we're here to lead. And if we are to lead, we must do more than defeat our enemies. We must shape the galaxy in our image, with the values that make us human. Compassion, creativity, and an unyielding drive for progress." A murmur ran through the crowd. Humanity's military success was impressive, but now the talk was shifting to something more. It wasn't just about survival, it was about what kind of future humanity wanted to create. Dr. Evelyn Monroe, a leading scientist and strategist, stood up. "What the Valkyrii and others fail to understand is that humanity's greatest strength is our adaptability. Our technology, our innovations, they aren't just advancements. They are reflections of who we are. We don't just change the way we fight, we change the way we think. And that, more than any weapon or ship, is what will define us." Another representative, Dr. Liam Chen, chimed in. "And we can't stop here. We've seen how quickly humanity adapts under pressure. We've seen the Crawl lose to our tactics. We can innovate faster than any other species in the galaxy. The next step is to build alliances, not just with the Valkyrii or the Crawl, but with the entire galaxy. We must make it clear that humanity is here to stay, and we are not a species to be feared, but to be respected." Ross nodded. "Agreed. We're not just fighting for survival. We're fighting for a place at the table, a voice in the Council. It's time we show the galaxy what we're really made of." Across the room, a younger strategist, Lieutenant Maya Torres, spoke up. "What if we make the galaxy an offer it can't refuse? We can leverage our greatest strength, unity. Humanity may have our differences, but when faced with adversity, we've always come together. That's something no one else can claim. There was a moment of silence as the idea hung in the air. Then, as if a spark had ignited, the room erupted in conversation. Unity. Innovation. Diplomacy. Humanity was more than just an opponent. They were a force to be reckoned with, one that could inspire and lead the galaxy into a new era. The meeting culminated in a bold decision. President Ross, supported by the Summit's Council, would send a representative to the Galactic Council, not just to negotiate for humanity's place but to propose a new vision for the galaxy, one of collaboration, growth, and mutual respect. Humanity had never been content to stay in the shadows, and now, they were ready to step forward and show the galaxy that they were more than just another species. They were the spark of change, the fire that could ignite a new age. But before that could happen, one final lesson had to be learned. The cost of underestimating humanity was not just defeat, it was being swept into a future where humans led the way. And the galaxy would soon discover that, once humanity set its sights on something, nothing could stand in its path. The Galactic Council had always prided itself on being the ultimate authority in the galaxy. It was a vast, diverse body of species, each with its own strengths, cultures, and political machinations. For eons, they had maintained a fragile balance of power, resolving disputes through diplomacy, imposing order through force, and quietly keeping the less developed species in check. The Crawl had been their hammer, a weapon of fear to keep the galaxy's lesser civilizations in line. But humanity was something different. Something unexpected. News of humanity's victories against the Crawl had traveled far and wide, reaching the ears of the council members, whose once dismissive attitudes were now being replaced by uncertainty. The Valkyrii, who had originally sought to manipulate humanity for their own ends, began quietly re-evaluating their stance. They knew that humanity's ability to outthink their enemies was unlike any species they had encountered. The Tazarians, with their efficiency and cunning, saw the potential for a strategic alliance, but not without suspicion. After all, humanity's methods were chaotic, unpredictable, and undeniably dangerous. The Council convened for an emergency session, called in response to humanity's growing influence. Representatives from every corner of the galaxy gathered, filling the chamber with an air of tension. The time for observation had ended. It was now time to act. At the head of the council chamber stood High Chancellor Solon, an ancient and respected leader of the Xanthian, a race known for their intellect and deep philosophical pursuits. His yellow eyes glinted with curiosity and a hint of apprehension as he addressed the assembly. Fellow council members, Solon began, his voice measured but thick with the weight of the situation, we must now discuss the matter of humanity. Their rapid rise cannot be ignored. Their victories against the Crawl are unlike anything we have seen in recent memory. The Crawl are, for the first time in centuries, on the back foot. And it is humanity that has forced them there. The council murmured in agreement, the magnitude of the threat now clear. The Valkyrii delegate, Xylo, was the first to speak up, his voice calm yet laced with an edge of concern. We have seen the humans' resourcefulness, their adaptability, Xylo said, his voice smooth as always. But we must ask ourselves, what will they do next? They have no understanding of the delicate balance of power we've built. They could disrupt everything. If they continue to act as they have, they will soon find themselves in direct conflict with the entire galaxy. Solon nodded. Indeed. But can we truly afford to ignore them any longer? The question now is not whether we can stop humanity, it's whether we should even try. If we oppose them, we risk provoking a conflict unlike anything we've faced before. If we embrace them, we may be opening ourselves to a new, unpredictable force. The Crawl representative, General Karnak, stood up, his massive frame looming over the council. His eyes were seething with fury, his voice barely controlled. The humans are a threat, he growled, his voice echoing across the chamber. They've humiliated my people. We cannot allow them to continue unchecked. If the council will not act, then I will. The Crawl will deal with humanity as we always do, with force. A tense silence fell over the room. It was clear that the Crawl had underestimated humanity from the start, and their fury now revealed how deeply they had been shaken. Humanity's tenacity and refusal to back down had ignited a fear within the Crawl that they hadn't felt in centuries. The Xanthian representative, Nira, a being of ethereal grace and intellect, spoke next, her voice gentle yet firm. We cannot be blinded by fear. Humanity has demonstrated that they will not bend to our will, and for that, they deserve respect. The question is not whether we can control them, but whether we can work with them. There is a chance for cooperation, if we allow it. President Alina Ross, who had watched the proceedings from her command center on Earth, listened intently to the Council's deliberations. It was clear to her that they were struggling to grasp the true nature of humanity. They saw the humans as a wild, unpredictable species, but what they didn't understand was that it was precisely that unpredictability that gave humanity its strength. She knew that humanity could not remain on the sidelines forever. Earth had proven its resilience, and humanity had earned its place in the galactic community. But they couldn't afford to be passive. If the Council was to embrace humanity, they would need to show the galaxy that humanity wasn't just a reactive force. They would need to make a bold move, a move that would leave no room for doubt. Ross called for a global broadcast, the first of its kind. The message would go out to every corner of the galaxy, transmitted through every available communication channel. She would address the Council, and the entire galaxy, directly. On Earth, President Ross stood before the cameras, her expression calm but resolute. The world watched, every eye on the screen as her voice rang out, carrying across the stars. To the galaxy, she began, humanity has fought against the Crawl and won, but we do not seek endless conflict. We seek a place in the galaxy, not as subordinates, not as pawns, but as equals. We offer cooperation, innovation, and the promise of a future where all species can thrive together. We ask only that you recognize our worth, not as a fleeting, insignificant species, but as one with the strength to change the course of history. She paused, her eyes steely as she delivered the final words. The cost of underestimating humanity is no longer just a defeat. It is the loss of the opportunity to shape the future alongside us. As the transmission ended, President Ross's message reverberated throughout the galaxy. The Council was forced to reckon with a new reality, a reality where humanity was no longer just another species, but a rising force that could no longer be ignored. The galaxy would soon learn that underestimating humanity wasn't just a mistake, it was a fatal miscalculation. The broadcast sent shockwaves across the galaxy. Humanity's declaration, bold and unyielding, reached every corner of the known universe. It wasn't just a challenge to the Crawl, it was a statement to the entire galaxy that humanity was no longer a fringe player. They were here to stay, and they would shape the future on their own terms. The Galactic Council was in turmoil. Some species, like the Valkyrii, saw the potential for cooperation. They admired humanity's audacity and resolve, recognizing that their innovation and adaptability were unmatched. The Xanthian, long committed to peace and diplomacy, began to consider what a future with humanity could look like, a future where a new, dynamic force might help usher in a new era of balance. Others, however, felt threatened. The Tazarians, pragmatic and aggressive, had always maintained their dominance through military precision, and they saw humanity's unpredictability as a dangerous wildcard. The Crawl, still reeling from their defeats, burned with a desire for revenge and were determined to never let humanity rise to prominence again. The Galactic Council, already divided over humanity's role, was now on the brink of chaos. The stakes had never been higher, and the question of how to deal with humanity was tearing the Council apart. In the heart of the Council chamber, High Chancellor Solon stood before the Assembly, his voice a calm yet firm presence. We cannot ignore the reality any longer. Humanity's rise has forced our hand. They are not just a threat to the Crawl, they are a threat to the established order of the galaxy. The Valkyrii delegate, Xylo, was the first to speak, his tone measured but with an unmistakable hint of admiration. I do not believe humanity is a threat. They are unique. Their capacity for innovation and their unyielding spirit are qualities the galaxy has not seen in millennia. I propose that we extend a hand of cooperation to them. If they are allowed to contribute, we could all benefit from their ingenuity. Solon raised an eyebrow, his gaze shifting to the Tazarian representative, who had been silent until now. The Tazarian general, Vrykk, finally spoke, his voice cold and cutting. Cooperation, he sneered. We should crush them before they grow any stronger. The humans are a virus, spreading chaos across the galaxy. They do not belong in the council. We must stop them now, before they become an unstoppable force. The debate continued to spiral, the council's atmosphere tense and volatile. Despite the growing faction of those who recognized humanity's potential, there was no consensus. And then, a voice, unexpected and unfamiliar, cut through the noise. Enough. The chamber fell silent. All eyes turned toward the entrance, where a lone human figure stood. It was President Alina Ross, flanked by a small group of Earth's most brilliant scientists and diplomats. She had entered the council chamber, uninvited and unapologetic, her expression hard and determined. "I'm sorry to interrupt," Ross said, her voice steady and powerful, "but the time for debate is over." She stepped forward, her presence commanding the room. Humanity is not here to beg for your approval. We are not here to become part of your games. We are here because we have earned our place, and if the galaxy is to survive what is coming, we will play a pivotal role. We will not be silenced. A low murmur rippled through the chamber. For the first time, the council members realized the full weight of Ross's words. Humanity wasn't just demanding a seat at the table, they were demanding that the galaxy change its very structure, that it evolve into something new. Ross continued, her eyes locked on the council members. "You've all seen what we can do. We've proven ourselves on the battlefield, but our strength isn't just in our ability to fight. It's in our ability to think, to adapt, and to innovate. We've already shown that we will not be held back by the crawl. But if you continue to underestimate us, if you continue to dismiss us as insignificant, you will regret it." The crawl delegate, General Karnak, rose from his seat, his anger palpable. "You dare." "I dare," Ross interrupted, her voice unwavering. "You've underestimated humanity before, General, and look where that got you. The next time you try, it will be the last mistake you ever make." The chamber was silent, the tension almost unbearable. But then, unexpectedly, the Tazarian General Vrykk spoke again, his voice much quieter than before. Perhaps the human's point has merit," Vrykk muttered. "If we cannot control them, perhaps we should work with them. Their unpredictability may be an asset, after all." Ross's gaze softened, but only slightly. "That's the spirit. Humanity's place in the galaxy isn't just about dominance. It's about creating something new, a galaxy where innovation, freedom, and strength go hand in hand." And with that, the room erupted. Some of the council members were still wary, but others, those who had seen humanity's rise and realized its potential, began to nod in agreement. Humanity, once seen as a nuisance, was now being recognized as a force of change, capable of reshaping the entire galaxy. But just as the tide seemed to turn in humanity's favor, a new threat emerged from the shadows. An encrypted transmission arrived on the Galactic Council's private channels. It was brief, but the message was clear: prepare for what's coming. The Crawl have regrouped. And they are coming for humanity. The Crawl had not given up. They had retreated, licked their wounds, and were now preparing for the most devastating offensive yet. Humanity had won battles, but the true test of their place in the galaxy was still to come. The Council was divided. Alliances were shifting. But one thing was certain: humanity's role in the future was no longer in question. The real battle, the one that would define their future, was just beginning. The Crawl's message was clear: they would not be humiliated again. Their warships, now reinforced and more formidable than before, were gathering in the dark reaches of space. General Karnak, having lost his confidence and much of his empire, was preparing for a strike unlike anything humanity had yet faced. It would be a final, all-or-nothing gambit to wipe humanity off the map and restore the Krall's dominance. Humanity's response was immediate, but it wasn't just military. In the wake of President Ross's impassioned address to the Galactic Council, humanity's position had shifted dramatically. Now, Earth was not only a military power, it was a diplomatic one. The alliances Ross had forged with sympathetic species were beginning to solidify into something more cohesive. The Valkyrii were ready to commit resources to humanity's defense. Even the Tazarians, while still wary, had agreed to a temporary alliance for the upcoming conflict. The Xanthian, once hesitant, began supplying advanced technological support, contributing their knowledge of deep space warfare. But despite the shifting balance of power, the looming threat of the Krall still cast a shadow over the galaxy. The question was no longer whether humanity could survive. The question was whether they could turn the tide of war before the Krall's offensive completely overran them. In the war rooms of Earth's command center, President Ross stood over a holographic map of the galaxy, her eyes scanning the projected movements of the Krall forces. She was joined by her top strategists, including Dr. Evelyn Monroe and Lieutenant Maya Torres, who had proven to be vital in humanity's fight against the Krall so far. Reports suggest the Krall will arrive within the next 6 days, Monroe said, her tone sharp and focused. They've massed their fleets on the fringes of the Magellan sector. It's a direct path to Earth's outer colonies, and if we don't intercept them before they reach the core, we'll be too far behind to stop them. Ross nodded, her expression grim. We need to hit them hard. We can't just wait for them to come to us. We need to make the first move, get in their way, throw them off course, and hit them with everything we've got. Torres leaned over the map, her fingers tracing potential battlegrounds. Our fleet's ready. But the Krall's forces outnumber ours, 5-1. Even with our new allies, it's going to be a slaughter if we don't make use of something the Krall don't understand, unpredictability. They expect us to fight their way. Let's fight our own. Ross smiled faintly. Exactly. We've already beaten them with tactics they couldn't anticipate. Now, let's make it count. It's time for humanity's greatest strength to come into play, creativity. With that, a bold plan was devised. Humanity's fleets, along with their allies, would set up a decoy system on the far side of the Magellan sector, one that would draw the Krall in with the promise of an easy target. In the meantime, humanity's real force would be hidden in the nebula core, a region of space where even Krall scanners would struggle to pick up their presence. Once the Krall entered the trap, humanity's fleets would strike fast and hard, catching them off guard with unexpected tactics, using their ships in ways the Krall could never predict. The plan was risky, too risky for some, but humanity had learned to fight in ways that didn't rely on brute force alone. Their adaptability was their weapon, and they would use it to its fullest. As the fleets readied themselves for battle, Ross addressed the entire human race in an unprecedented broadcast. It was a call to arms, but it was also a call for unity. Her voice was calm, but there was a fire in it, a fire that could be heard across every star system. To every human, every colony, every ally, she said, her words echoing in the hearts of billions. The Krall thought they could break us. They thought they could destroy us. But we are not the kind of species that bends to intimidation. We are the kind of species that fights, that adapts, and that rises when everything seems lost. Now is our time. We fight for our future. For our place in this galaxy. We will show them what happens when they underestimate humanity. Together, we will win this. Together, we will decide our fate. The message stirred something deep within the hearts of humanity. A unified front had formed, not just against the Krall, but against the entire galaxy that had underestimated them. The rest of the galaxy, still watching from the sidelines, was forced to acknowledge humanity's resolve. No longer were they just a species in the fight for survival. They were leaders, they were innovators, and they were on the verge of something monumental. As the fleets moved into position, the final preparations were made. Humanity's forces were small compared to the Krall's armada, but they were smarter, faster, and far more determined. Every ship, every soldier, every pilot knew what was at stake. And with that knowledge came the certainty that failure was not an option. When the Kraul arrived, they were met with a haunting silence. There were no ships in sight. The Kraul's warships prowled through the emptiness of space, their scanners sweeping for any sign of resistance. What they didn't know was that humanity's fleet was already moving, fast, silently, and with deadly precision. The trap had been set. And the Kraul were walking straight into it. The silence of space was broken only by the ominous hum of the Kraul warships, as they entered the heart of the Magellan sector. The fleet's commanders, all seasoned veterans, knew they were heading straight into a trap, but their arrogance overpowered any lingering doubt. The Kraul had never been outmaneuvered like this before, and they believed that no force, no matter how unpredictable, could stand up to them for long. But humanity had a different idea. The first move came from the decoy system, an artificial signal designed to mimic a vulnerable colony. Kraul ships swarmed toward it, eager for the easy victory. What they didn't realize was that the real fight would be waiting for them in the nebula core, where the strange, shifting clouds of gas and radiation made it nearly impossible for them to detect anything that wasn't close range. And in the heart of the nebula, humanity's fleet was hiding in plain sight, using every trick they had learned from their previous victories. Then, without warning, humanity's ships surged from the darkness like predators leaping from the shadows. The first wave of attack was disorienting, a flurry of rapid maneuvers and surprise strikes that caught the Kraul completely off guard. Advanced tactics, using decoys, surprise flanking routes, and communication jammers, made it impossible for the Kraul to coordinate their massive war machine. Every Kraul ship was forced to react to humanity's moves, playing catch-up in a game they didn't understand. The Valkyrie's contribution had proven vital. Their technology allowed the humans to disrupt the Kraul's superior sensors, creating blind spots where humanity could strike. President Ross watched from Earth, her hands clenched in a mix of tension and anticipation. She knew this battle would determine the future of humanity. If they succeeded, they would prove their place among the galaxy's elite. If they failed, Earth and its colonies would become nothing more than a footnote in galactic history. And then, the first Kraul warship fell. It was a spectacular display of precise firepower, a coordinated strike that split the massive Kraul vessel down the middle. The sheer audacity of the attack left the Kraul fleet stunned. They had never faced an enemy that could land such a blow on them so swiftly. Panic began to spread through their ranks. They weren't just being attacked, they were being outsmarted. And with every passing minute, the Kraul's chances of victory slipped further away. But this was only the beginning. Humanity's greatest advantage had always been their ability to innovate on the fly. When their ships made contact with the Kraul, they used a new weapon, electromagnetic disruptors that interfered with the Kraul's communication systems. The Kraul fleet, once an efficient and deadly unit, now found itself fragmented and confused. Without coordinated communication, the Kraul were powerless to mount a unified defense. They were isolated, and each ship was picked off, one by one. On the front lines, Lieutenant Maya Torres led her squadron through the chaos, her voice steady as she barked orders to her pilots. Keep it tight. Stay ahead of them. They'll expect us to follow the rules, so we're going to break every one of them. Her squadron moved with deadly precision, using hit-and-run tactics, weaving through debris fields and asteroid belts to confuse the Kraul. The war was no longer a battle of sheer strength, it was a battle of wits, and humanity was winning. In the depths of the nebula, General Karnak could feel his forces collapsing. His fleet was in disarray, and he had underestimated humanity's determination. It wasn't just that they fought with intelligence, it was that they fought with something the Kraul had long since lost: hope. Humanity wasn't just fighting for survival. They were fighting for their future, for a chance to shape their own destiny in a galaxy that had once dismissed them as insignificant. Karnak's ships were being destroyed faster than he could issue orders. The Kraul had always relied on brute force, but humanity's innovative strikes had crippled them. It wasn't just the weaponry, it was the unpredictability of the attack. The Kraul had never faced an enemy that didn't fight by their rules, and it was a bitter lesson they were learning far too late. Back on Earth, President Ross watched as the reports came in. Humanity's fleets had taken the Crawl by surprise, and the tide of battle was shifting. With each Crawl ship that fell, with each victory, Ross felt a surge of pride. But she knew this wasn't just about winning a war, it was about sending a message to the galaxy. Humanity wasn't here to be subjugated. Humanity was here to lead. As the last of the Crawl warships fell silent, a final transmission was sent from Karnak's flagship. It was a simple message, but it was clear: we surrender. The battle had been won. But the victory was not just military, it was ideological. The Crawl had been defeated, but humanity had proven that their place in the galaxy was no longer in question. The galaxy's powers, who had watched the events unfold, could no longer ignore what humanity had achieved. In the aftermath of the battle, as humanity's allies began to regroup, President Ross addressed the galaxy once more. Her message was broadcast across every corner of known space, her words strong and resolute. The cost of underestimating humanity has been paid in full. The Crawl have learned that lesson, and so should the rest of you. We are no longer just another species in the galaxy. We are a force to be reckoned with. And this is just the beginning. Humanity has a future here, and we will not stop until it is secured, not just for us, but for every species who seeks peace, progress, and prosperity. The galaxy had witnessed humanity's rise, and now, they would have to reckon with it. Humanity had taught them all the cost of underestimation.